Hey there, happy Friday. Welcome to my studio. I'm Daniel Norton, photographer here in New York City. Today we're going to talk about what I think is a myth, but I could be wrong, and maybe not exactly a myth, maybe that's too strong of a word. But I often, when I talk about gear or in conversations about gear, people always say, right, but what if the client asks me to use blah, 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 whatever gear it is? So this Sony camera, that Nikon camera, this, it's always a camera for some reason. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. I'm not going to say that never happens, and I can see it happening a lot more in the filmmaking end of it. And there's reasons for that, which maybe we'll get. I don't think this channel has a huge following of filmmakers, so I'm not going to get too much into that, but let's just say for the moment that we're not going to worry about that part of it. So what I want to wonder is, when a client says, hey, can you shoot it with this camera or whatever, or I'll only hire you, which is normally how people seem to phrase it, if you have this camera, why exactly are they asking that? And I think this is where what it comes down to. We need to communicate. I think that a lot of times we don't communicate, and people put these questions out there, these things out there, and it's like, did you talk to the client? Why exactly did they ask for the Sony blah, blah? Is it because their cousin has one and said it was a good camera, and somehow they trust their cousin over the professional photographer they're hiring? That's a red flag. Is it because they read something and think that it does a special feature that they need, like, I don't know, certain frames per second if you are doing some kind of video clips or whatever, or that maybe it works underwater or whatever, the thing is, maybe they just know something about this thing and there's a reason why they're asking for that. Sometimes it's something vague, it's this many megapixels, or it shoots in this kind of color space. And they may not understand or realize that lots of cameras might do that, right? So what we need to figure out is why. I remember once that I was doing this job and the client wanted to shot with a 4x5. This is now back in the day. They wanted it shot on 4x5 film. And the brief showed the thing like literally smaller than 4x5 being printed. And I said, well, is there a reason why you want it shot 4x5? And they said, well, it gives a certain depth of field or whatever. And that is not untrue, right? So now I understood why they wanted 4x5. If they had said something like, well, because it's going to be printed this size and it has to be the same size in order to reproduce properly, then I might have said, we could shoot at medium format. Instead, you'll still get this. You're not going to notice that size, blah, 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 right? The conversation could have opened up into why somebody would do something. Once I had somebody, it was a jewelry job, they wanted me to shoot with a certain Canon, a 5D. It was an early 5D camera that was like a lot of megapixels. And they were like, well, we want you to shoot it with this camera. And I was like, why? And they were like, well, it's X number of megapixels. And I'm like, right, but you're shooting jewelry, and actually this phase 1 back is better for that. Not only is it more megapixels, or it might have been the same, but because of the bit depth, you're going to get more details. So again, this conversation, if I had just been like, okay, I'll rent a 5D, and again, not bashing Canon, this is not specifically that, it would have just been, I would have used the camera they said, and I wouldn't have chosen, in my mind, the right camera for that job. Of course, in the end, they listened to me because I explained why, and we used the right camera. I'm not saying they're always wrong when they ask for something specific, but I think that when a client asks you to do something or use this very specific piece of gear, it's important for you to understand why they are asking you this. Because they may not have it right. And that could be a problem. Or maybe there's something this piece of gear does, but only with a certain way of using it. And you could even use that piece of gear and not, right, in this case, the megapixels, and not get the thing they wanted. So we really need to think about this, right? Communication with clients is so, so important. We want to make sure that the client gets what they want. But the client doesn't always know, right, exactly the tools. That's our job. We are supposed to be the experts. When somebody comes to me with a project, I will spec it out and give a quote. And in that quote, I will include all the different things that I believe that we need for a project. And sometimes they will come back and say, like, why do you need this, this, and this? And I will explain it, and they'll be like, oh, okay. And the thing is, again, if I was just like, they're worried about the money, whatever, and I cut it down that I didn't do the proper job, I might not get hired again. So it's important for us to communicate with our client. So I want you to use the new Canon blah, blah, or Sony blah, blah, Olympus, whatever. Okay, I mean, we can certainly rent one. Why is it that you want to use that? Is there a certain feature? What is it that we're going to get as an advantage out of this? Not I only shoot this camera, but why is it that you're asking me to shoot this other camera? and make sure that you weigh your options and make sure that you know why. Now, if they do ask you to shoot something, I'll just throw those in at the end here. Like let's say you've never shot with medium format phase 1 camera and they ask you to shoot with it, it makes sense to shoot with it, you've never used it before, make sure you rent it ahead of time. This applies to any camera. You want to know you can process those files. You do not want to be used to using your presets and stuff for your Sony, and then you shoot with this Canon and you try to apply the preset and it looks terrible with the client staring at you. So make sure if you're using a camera that you're not used to, that you get it at least a day ahead of time if you're renting it. There you go. So what do you guys think? Do you have clients to do this? I would love to hear this. Except for the one time with the 4x5, I don't think I've ever really been, in the 5D, I don't think I've ever really remember a client demanding, and even when they did ask for it though, honestly, it was more like just a conversation. So I'd like to know what you think. Does this happen to you? Have you dealt with it? Were there reasons why? Did you just rent the camera? Did you not do the job because you don't shoot that kind of camera? Let me know in the comments below. Also subscribe, ring the bell, do all those good things, and I will see you next time.